welcome back to Little Rescuers Halloween week. This is day 5, this is our last Halloween session, and today we're going to talk about and have a look at the brain. So guys, first of all, before we even think about our brain, first we need to have a think about where our brain is. So our brain is up here. It sits inside of our skull, so the bony part in our head, okay? Now, the skull is like a box, like a bony box, and it needs to be hard because it needs to protect and look after our soft brain, which is in the inside, okay? Put the skull there for a minute. So, this is a model of our brain, okay? Now, the brain is the boss of our body. Okay, so the brain is in charge of everything. So it makes our hearts beat, it makes us breathe, it makes us move, it makes us blink, cough, swallow, think. It's the most important organ in our body. And that's what the brain is, an organ. So our brain has some different areas called lobes, and then it has 3 main parts. So this big part that you can see on the top, this is called our cerebrum, and that looks after something called the higher functions of our body. So that is things like hearing, vision, touch, interpreting things, reasoning, emotions. So when we're a little bit sad, when we're happy, when we're excited, when we're scared, this part of our brain looks after all of that, and that is in charge of those higher functions. And then at the back underneath, we've got an area called the cerebellum, okay? And the cerebellum looks after our balance, it looks after our posture, sometimes how straight we are, also our coordination, and how we control our muscles. So that's an important part. And then underneath, this little bit is called the brain stem. So if you think of a flower and a long stem, and the flower's the bit at the top, that's very similar. The brain stem holds the brain at the top. And the brain stem is like the part that connects our brain at the top to our big long spinal cord that runs down the middle of our back, okay? And the brain stem is a really important area because in there controls our breathing, our heart rate, our temperature, how we sleep, how we move food through our tummy and how it comes out, and then reflexes like coughing, like sneezing, like gagging, like blinking. So that is a super important part, and we need to make sure that we keep that part really safe. And we really need to look after our brain because it's quite soft. That's why it's inside of our hard skull, so that you've got to get through the skull before the brain gets hurt. Our brain weighs about 3 pounds, which is about 1.5 kilograms. Now, that's a bit tricky to work out, isn't it? So, if you guys have got any bananas at home, go and grab a bunch of bananas. And here I've got a bunch of 8 bananas, have a feel, and that is about how heavy your brain is, okay? So these bananas equal the same weight as this brain. That's quite cool. And our brain is made up of mainly water. So it's about 75% water. And I said that our brain is the most important thing in the body. It's the boss of our body, and it's actually an organ, the most important organ in our body, but it behaves like a muscle. And what we can do with muscles is that we can train them to do new things. So all of the time, you can teach your brain new things. So when you're little, you can't walk, but your brain learns how to do that. And then it tells your muscles to move so that you can walk, and then you run, and then you can ride a bike, and then you can climb. So if you want to learn something new, just concentrate really hard and you'll be able to do it. Now we're going to have a look at a real brain. So it's not a human brain, it's a pig's brain, okay? And I'm going to show you how it looks. You guys can see that this brain looks slightly different to this brain. And that's because this brain, because it's not in the body anymore, it hasn't got the muscle tone that this brain would have. So it's opened out, so it's a bit flatter, okay? But it's still separated, the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain. And if you guys look closely, you can see lines that look a bit like noodles. So the brain looks a little bit like noodles. And those little squiggly noodly marks on the brain are called gyrus. And in between, there's little lines. And those lines are called sulcus. And they are really important because they help our brain send messages to every single part of our body. Now, how do you think the messages get from right up here in our brain to the different parts of our body? So, they do that through electricity, okay? So in our brain, we've got tiny, tiny cells. You'd only be able to see them through a microscope, and they're called neurons. And we've got in our brain 100 billion neurons. And if you tried to sit and count all of those neurons, it'd take you 3,000 years. So it's a lot. And on their own, one tiny little neuron has only got a really, really small amount of electricity in it. But all together, if you use all of those little neurons in your brain, you could turn on a light bulb. So that's quite a lot of electricity. And if we want to run, so if we're outside and we want to run really quickly, our brain, with our little neurons in, will send a message all down our body, telling our feet and legs to start moving really quickly. And the electricity will travel down our body to our muscles, okay? And the electricity moves from our brain down our body in something called a nerve. Let's say that this nerve, so it starts in our brain, let's say that this nerve travels down to our hand, okay? And let's say that by accident, we walk past a candle and we touch it with our hand, okay? Then our nerve feels that's really hot and it sends a message up to our brain so quickly, all through the electrical impulses, all through the neurons, saying, whoa, 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 that candle's really hot, that candle's really hot. And then our brain sends a message back going, take your hand away, take your hand away, take your hand away. And you pull your hand away from the candle really quickly. But that happens so fast. Happens faster than we can blink, happens faster than we can definitely think about it. We just do it automatically because our brain protects us as best it can from getting hurt. So our brain's really good at telling us what to do, at keeping our body working properly and at protecting us. But we have to make sure that we protect our brain because we know it's the boss of our body. And as you can see, if we move our brain about, it's super soft, okay? So if I cut the different parts of our brain, I don't have to really do much to it. So I can pull it and move it, but it is really soft. So inside of our brain it's white, on the outside it's usually grey with a little bit of red on it, okay? So if we fell, for example, and we banged our bony skull and we cracked or damaged our bony skull, then it will be really easy to damage our brain underneath. And this brain, remember, is in charge of everything, and we do not want this to get damaged because then our nerves won't be able to take the messages to our body and our body won't be able to work properly, okay? So we have to look after our brain. So guys, a really good way of protecting your soft brain to make sure it keeps working for you is to protect your skull on the outside. So if you guys are going out on a bike or a scooter, even if you think it's really safe, even if you're not going that close to a road, sometimes accidents can happen when you don't expect them to. So if you wear a helmet then if you fall, that helmet will protect your hard skull, and your hard skull can do its job and protect your soft brain so your body can keep working properly. So thank you so much for listening, guys, and have a great Halloween.